Babri Masjid in 92, which had huge impact on the unity of people as well as on the unity of the working class. In 1990s, unity of peasantry and working class was developing in our country against GATT and WTO agreement, but demolition of Babri Masjid had its the root of the problem, it's, India is a very complex society, as all of us understand. We can't simplify even the answer cannot be simple. There is a political level at which, you know, developments happen, and the other is, which is a bigger concern to us. The bigger concern to us is both the formation and the nature of consciousness that is developing amongst workers and the people. Ultimately, that is our real challenge and that is our concern. See, how the working class consciousness is shaped is not simple. It's not that. It's not like a train which starts on one track and it will reach its destination, because the destination is being renegotiated at every station, literally. And there is huge discussion in amongst historians also and across the world. Is the working class by nature, is it revolutionary? This whole question of class in itself, class for itself, does the worker always have a working class consciousness? I mean, these are big issues. And they're not just for working class, they're also for. Is it better? I'll go ahead. Okay. Or even for women. You know, do all women have a democratic consciousness? Nowadays, the phrase that is used, the concept is feminism. Everyone is a feminist. All women are feminists. What is feminism? These are big challenges to explain, to understand, and in the movement. If all women are feminists, then what about the class differences amongst women? What about caste differences amongst women? What about ideological differences? After all, the fact that I am a woman doesn't mean, and this is something which is thrown at us in the movement and in everywhere. Wherever you go and speak on women's rights, one question will always come, and I will state it from the stage rather than it coming. औरत ही औरत की दुश्मन होती है. Huh? This is the question which comes. Why? Because after all, there is something known as consciousness, ideology, commitment, objective. The fact that I have a particular gender does not mean that I will always have a democratic consciousness, because it is not written that all women will always be democratic and will stand up for women's rights. Well, I may stand up for my rights, but will I stand up for all women's rights? And that is the challenge in the women's movement. How do you, and especially in the left-led women's movement, how do you frame and phrase the demands of women in such a way that it speaks for all women? I have to speak not just for myself, a middle-class woman. I have to speak, if I speak in the women's movement, I have to speak for all women. But all women, it is not what we call a homogeneous category. It is not one category. That category of woman can be broken into so many things, So this is the challenge. It's also there in the working class. I'm sure all of you see it every day. As far as the ruling classes are concerned and the state, there are different levels. One is the political level. Now, I think, and this is something I can say from personal experience, because at that time I was much more active and I was in the forefront of the women's movement. I happened to interact with certain very prominent people, including the Prime Minister, on some of those issues. I think one of the biggest mistakes on this Babri Masjid issue, I'm saying, one of the biggest mistakes was reopening the locks of that Babri Masjid. Surprisingly, you may not remember, but because I was fighting it every day on the ground, the locks of the Babri Masjid were opened in the same period, around almost in the same month, I think, as the Shah Banu issue. Okay. So when I remember we were protesting outside Parliament when the bill to revoke the Shah Banu judgment was brought. No, the Shah Banu judgment had many problems about personal laws, etc. But it upheld the right of a Muslim woman to maintenance. And I don't know if you remember, this is 1986. The judgment comes in April or May, Chandrachud's judgment, and it gives the. I mean, if you think of the princely amount of 172 rupees and some 62 or 90 paisa or something. The whole Shah Banu issue is about 172 rupees and 90 paisa to, I think she was in her 60s or early 70s at that time. But it is not about the amount, it was about the manner in which it was taken up. Was the Muslim personal law is under attack, and as it played out in big cities in Bombay, Islam is in danger. Okay, ADWA, which I was the president of the Delhi unit at that time, we had a big struggle. I spent, I think, in our organization spent almost a year in that struggle. Now, two things were happening at the same time, and sometimes sometimes you get politicians who are too smart. Sometimes you get politicians who don't understand the implications of politics, and they do this quick politicking. And I think that's what Rajiv Gandhi, who was misguided, totally misguided. Somewhere they lost the by-elections in Assam, and they were told, his advisors told him, you have to go back on the Shah Banu judgment, then the Muslim minority in Assam will be happy. So that is why that he first said he would bring an ordinance, but actually then he brought the bill, the Muslim women's rights and protection or whatever, in divorce, 1986 in May. It was introduced in February 1986, the same month as the unlocking of the Babri Masjid. So, to garner votes, you can play any politics. But the point is, on the ground, there is no vacuum. What you do has an impact. It impacts the politics on the ground. And till today, that going back on the Shah Banu judgment is seen as what is called in the Hindutva language an appeasement of the Muslims. Okay, it is not in any kind of appeasement of the Muslims, because the Muslim women wanted maintenance, and maintenance to Shah Banu was not given under personal laws. It was given under section 125 of the CRPC. The CRPC is a secular law. It is a secular law. It is not on the basis of religion. And Edward undertook a campaign all over India with one demand: retain section 125 of CRPC. Because when you are excluding Muslim women under section 125 of CRPC, you are making a division on the basis of religion in a secular criminal law. The criminal law of India is not based on religion. It is different from personal laws. Okay, personal laws is a different matter. And you know what the maximum maintenance any woman could get under section 125 in 1986-87? It was 500 rupees per month. That was the maximum. Much later, after a long struggle, it was raised to 3,000, 3,500 after some 20 years of stuff. How much is 500 rupees? And the whole struggle was. But what happens is that when you want to maintain your ruling class politics in a particular manner, you think one carrot here, one carrot here. So one carrot for the Hindu community, which has opened the locks of Babri Masjid, which was locked all these years. It would have stayed locked. Okay. Now, of course, there's no change. You can't go back to 1986. And one carrot to the Muslim community, इनको भी खुश कर, this, this kind of politics. So this is ruling class politics. We have to understand how the ruling class politics changes the game to suit its own interest on a long term. And now for the next 30 years, we are doing only fighting around Hindu Muslim or else caste. It is well known. One of the interpretations on the Mandal Commission thing is that it was brought in to counter the, communal card. So this, how rulers of India, how ruling class politics fashions and dictates the terms of political engagement for the next decades, that is something. But for us, no, we can't change the way rulers behave and politicians in this country, what determines their objectives and how they act. I mean, of course, we did. We told Rajiv Gandhi because he was consulting all the ulema and all. And we, at that time we joked. We didn't realize that 1 year later it would be true. I remember Professor Zoya Hassan and myself, we were coming out of a meeting with Rajiv Gandhi and we told him, ये आप क्या कर रहे हैं, आप उलेमा से पूछ के कानून बनाएंगे, तो अगली बार आप सती पे पंडित. नेक्स्ट ईयर अनफॉर्चुनेटली इट वाज सती, द देवराला happened in 1987 September. It was like, this is something the British government was trying to do. Ask the pandits and all how sati legislation. Now, the point is you are living in a secular India. You are living under a secular constitution. I remember the Shankaracharya of Kanchi, I think, or Puri, I'm getting old. He said Sati to is part of India's tradition. And Swami Agnivesh came to us from the Edo and said, you come with me, we will have a Shastrarth with the Shankaracharya. We said, to what purpose? The women of India are not asking for their rights based on Hindu religion. The women of India are asking for their rights on the basis of the Indian constitution. And in that constitution, I have the right to live. Whether as a widow, whether as a single woman, whether as an orphan, whether as a divorce, I have equal rights in the constitution, under the constitution, and I will go to the court, Supreme Court of India with that understanding. I'm not, I'm a student of history. And I have studied ancient history for my master's level. I can go at length into what the Vedas say because I have read part of the Vedas, at least if not all. I can say I've read the Arthashastra, I've read many of the ancient texts because I've been a student and teacher of history. But I am living in independent India. We are negotiating our rights on the basis of the Constitution of India. We are not negotiating our rights. We are not living in Hindu India. We are not living under a religious dispensation, and we do not want to be, because that was the purpose of what I was saying, that the people of India fought for a secular India. They did not fight for, and those who were talking about Hindu religion, such as the RSS, they were very clear. Their words were not Hindustan as we say, but Hindustan. Their flag was the Bhagwat Dhwaj. I mean, if you want, we can have quotations. They are very clear. They were not opposing the British. They were not part of any of these movements. So there is another formulation coming from the RSS in terms of what is their notion, and they never fought for freedom. They said, British के साथ हमारा क्या contradiction? कोई contradiction ही नहीं था उनका. Okay? And let us understand, it is the British who introduced this whole understanding of religion as the basis, who introduced caste. I mean, in Punjab, when I was telling you, John Lawrence's dog, they introduced a category of land-owning castes. So land could be sold only to land-owning castes. Okay? Now, once you make this distinction of land-owning castes and others, and how it means you are perpetuating the caste system, you are making caste into a justiciable category, which is a category which we think, oh, ye to pre-capitalist tradition, all that. But once you bring it in your laws, it becomes justiciable, it is carried into modern India. Now, our laws, for instance, if we are going to say only certain castes can own land, we all know which are the castes who cannot own land. It is the upper castes who can own land. Dalits, other castes cannot own land. Okay, and in Punjab, they even introduced a bill in 1907. I've written about it also. When the farmers' agitation was going on, I wrote about it. They said that it will land will go to the eldest son, primogeniture, which means what? If I don't have a son, I will do female feticide. And our friend and comrade Kirti Singh has done a study of the laws in India, and she had identified 42 laws in India, in contemporary India, which have son preference written into the law. So what I'm saying is these are not traditions only. These traditions we carry over, they influence our day-to-day life. They influence our consciousness also. And the workers also carry that consciousness. If middle class can carry, you can imagine, middle class can carry so much of this consciousness, so do the workers. Now, here we are talking of building unity. It will remain a challenge. It is a challenge because there are other forces in our society who are trying to mobilize on a different platform with a different objective. We are trying to mobilize and we are trying to unite people because we believe in democracy, because we believe in the rights of the people. Those who do not believe in the rights of the people, those who do not believe in giving more power to the people, they will frame their objective, they also frame the agenda. So for the last 10 years almost now, and post Babri Masjid, let us face it. Let us face it. What are we doing? We're only discussing Hindu, Muslim, or this or that. And the ruling class is getting away with GATT, with WTO, with LPG, everything. They are getting away. We are struggling. I mean, lynching can happen, so all human rights can be put on. But this is what the ruling class, how it rules. The British did it. Our own Indian so-called ruling classes are doing the same. The only way you can do it is by building the unity of the people. Unfortunately, religion, once it enters the discourse of the movement, which way it will go, you cannot predict. You just cannot predict. And this is from freedom struggle times. As students of history, we always say Gandhi spoke of Ram Rajya. And Ram Rajya has a meaning. Not how, but Gandhi's Ram Rajya was at least different. This Ram Rajya that we are seeing is totally different because I don't know. If there was a Ram, I don't think he would have liked this kind of Rajya. Certainly. The whole concept of Ram Rajya has been turned on its head in this present scenario. Totally on its head because this is not the concept of Ram Raj that anyone would want to live in. But this is now there. How do you counter it? Edua, for instance, with which I have worked in 1992, just 1 month before this demolition happened in December. 1 month before that, Edua held a big rally, national level rally in Lucknow. We could not all go to Ayodhya. Ayodhya could not have taken these lakhs of women. Our slogan was two things: Masjid rahe, you want to build a temple, mandir bana lo. But ussi jagah. I'm a historian. You tell me, how many of you can say I was born in this 10 by 10 patch of this hospital? Even the man who was leading that campaign, Advani ji, can he say where in Karachi he was born or whatever? Can he say? Nobody. अभी आप पूरा झगड़ा कि इसी जगह यही स्पॉट पे राम का जन्म हुआ था. Come on. We are students of history. We know what we can prove and what we cannot prove. Okay? And you can build your temple. You want to build a temple, who's stopping you? Do it legally, do it legitimately, do jitna bhavya banana hai, bana lo. But why it is against the law to have demolished a monument. It is against the law. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court of India admits that a violation has happened and yet gives a reward, in a sense, to those who have violated the law. And this is how our courts function. We have to live with this reality. We have to keep critiquing, moving on it. But the whole politics of the country has been changed with that. It is something which is not new. I think those who have struggled to build unity of the people know that these challenges come. They come in different shapes, in different ways, and we have to learn to handle that. It's a big challenge because today the middle class, particularly the middle class. As a teacher, for instance, I used to find once our students' unions, this is in a women's college, the girls came and said, "Ma'am, हमने अनाउंस किया था जिस दिन हम ओथ लेंगे स्टूडेंट्स यूनियन प्रेसिडेंट के, हम हवन करेंगे." हाँ, अभी स्टूडेंट्स यूनियन है, हवन करो. I mean, apart from why, what, havan, whatever, but you represent the students of the college. The students include all castes, communities. Am I a representative of only a particular community in the students' union? That is a question I have to ask. But we have allowed our public spaces to become identified with the religion of the majority community. And how the market influences, I'm giving an example. In a particular state of India where, like this conference, I was General Secretary of the Indian Association for Women's Studies when we held a conference in 2014 in a particular state of India. And the teachers one day came and said, Indu, that day the Bihu starts. So I thought Bihu starts means it's a festival. You will not believe it. In the university, in the classrooms, prasad is being made, puja is being conducted. Outside the main academic block, not only, the market rides on everything. The market rides on everything. So now there is a Miss Bihu contest going on. Okay? This is all freedom, my freedom, fashion. This is it. How many of my own colleagues in the last 25-30 years have spoken to me and said, Women's Day, 8 March hai Women's Day, because for about a week your television channel is saying Pond's Fair and Lovely International Women's Day. The market rides. One of my friends called it Karwa Chauth capitalism. Okay. Now, the market can use anything. They have no problem. They have no problem. Rakhi ka card bana denge, Father's Day. Everything is commercialized. So this is what is going on. I think the only people smiling is those who are making profits on all this. Whether it's your flag, you are undermining every value that the freedom struggle stood for. Every value is being undermined. But not only will you create a market for these flags, but tomorrow if in my house that flag is not fluttering, then it is, she is not nationalist enough. Who decides? Who decides what I'm saying? And the day after it is over, probably those flags will be lying somewhere. We've all heard of that poor garbage collector who's been in Lucknow or who has been prosecuted for carrying those. What are we reducing ourselves to? This is all gimmickry. It's gimmickry, like flowering shower petals during pandemic. Now, the real story is that all aeroplanes need to be flown. Okay, and they need that exercise. The aeroplanes, the machines need this exercise. Okay, now they're standing idle during the pandemic, so the planes are also flown. No? The machine has to be used. Do this gimmickry flower pen. We all know how many people died. We all know how contemporary India has gone through one of its worst crises. Worst crisis in terms of family emotions, human emotions, personal lives. You could not stand with your brother who may be suffering from COVID. Comrade Ranjana died. I know, Comrade Ranjana, you would have all known. Not one member of her family was there for her cremation, not because they did not love her, but they just couldn't. They were suffering from COVID. She died of COVID in the hospital. This is what the pandemic reduced us to. It created an emotional crisis in our lives. Emotional. How do you stand with your family? How do you stand with your friends and comrades when you are getting this? But the government of India, nothing. Oh, they are only patting their back saying how well we handle the crisis, when all of us have gone through a very, very deep emotional, human, social crisis. These things take a long time for us to get over, to come to grips with as human beings. Okay? So I think what capitalism is doing today to us, this is capitalism and the policies that capitalism imposes on us and which are coming to us through our government. It it is dehumanizing us. If I can be silent when a man or a woman is being killed, lynched, either for being a Dalit or for being a Muslim or for coming from a particular community, it is dehumanizing me. Leave alone being an Indian. Am I being even a human being? जिसको हम कहते हैं अपनी नज़र में हम गिरते हैं. हम अपनी नज़र में गिरते हैं जब हम अपने पड़ोसी के साथ खड़े नहीं हो सकते उसके संकट में. And this is what capitalism is reducing us to. I think it requires all kinds of emotional, human resources, political strategies to deal with this crisis. Here, Babri Masjid is one incident. There is an incident every day. Your constitution is being changed. The categories of constitution are being changed. The categories of citizenship are being redefined. It is a big challenge, and it is not just a challenge in terms of the economic policies. It is a challenge in terms of the political categories on the basis of which our rights are defined or going to be defined. And I think it is a challenge because, as we in the women's movement have always said, if there is a rape in your village or in your mohalla, is it only a women's issue? Is it only a women's issue? You tell me. If a young woman is burnt for dowry, is it only a women's issue? I mean, this is the society we want to build, in which there is rape. And mind you, how much rape, how much dowry, how much have you seen the statistics? The National Crime Records Bureau, which is the registered crime, unregistered, unreported, we can't. For the last 20 years almost, you can go through the record, 6 to 7,000 women are killed for dowry. I'm not talking about dowry demand, not dowry. I'm talking about dowry deaths. But one so-called militant is killed in Kashmir, the papers are splashing. These women are dying in their homes. 6 to 7,000 women every year as per Government of India data. In our homes. All of us' homes. And I'm saying it to you because in the 1980s, when we were part of that huge anti-dowry movement, public sector employees of the trade unions organized Mahila Samitis in their unions. I remember going to Bharat Electronics. I remember going to LIC offices in Delhi. 8th March programs in all the RBI had a committee. So many of the public sector organizations. So what I'm saying is that our struggle is not just about, it is of course about the wage, it is of course about the bonus, it is about DA, it is about, because those are our basic rights. It's not charity we are asking for, those are our basic rights. But the trade union movement has to also take up this whole issue of the consciousness. If we are going to go into modern India with dowry, with caste, with sati, with divorce, and uh, vagabond, because the whole section 125 is what it is, that a woman is not driven to the streets when she's divorced. Okay, we have to discuss what is happening to relationships in our society, what is really happening to the children, the whole issue of mental health and depression which pandemic has brought to the fore. These are all issues, but we cannot fight all of that unless we deal with this big issue in our lives, which is reducing us to absolute inhumanity. It is politically inhuman, it is socially inhuman. What is being sought to be done, the play, the games that are being played around the categories of our constitution, as we say in our discussions, the whole spirit of constitutional morality is being undermined every day in the name of law and in the name of building India and in the name of nationalism. So we have to see that, the British, when they came to India, they were very clear, they were developing India. They were developing India. You all would have read about the white man's burden. The white man had to civilize the whole world. So at the moment, one particular community has to take us to greater glory in this country through inhumanity on the streets of this country every day, in the villages of this country every day. It is for us to decide, do we want that kind of India, or do we want to carry forward the tradition of India, which the working class and peasantry, I mean, we're sitting in Hyderabad, the Andhra peasantry had the most heroic role in the peasant movement of India. The Telangana struggle is not the recent Telangana struggle. The Telangana peasant movement of the 40s is one of the biggest struggles of India. Okay, so it is for us. It is an ideological battle. It is about the idea of India. It is about what human values we will build and rest our future on. And I think the working class has the biggest stake in that future. Biggest stake. Middle class will always play, Marx is well known for saying it's the most vacillating class. It sits on the fence. इधर का झुकता है तो इधर झुक जाता है, उधर का. That's our role, है ना? That's our role. We will always play that. We'll play safe, है ना? Just as the leaders of India talk about the nation every day, but we know they're not talking about the India that we are talking about. Because they're talking about the nation every day. Everything that they are doing is in the name of the nation. But we know it is not the same nation. It is not the nation which is placed in our constitutional objectives. It is something else. So it is a battle for ideas, but it's a battle for humanity. Says there's a question saying, in today's context, the fascist forces are dually attacking working class. Religious mobilizations like Kawar Yatras, freebies. How to counter this? How to counter it? You tell me. We are not in government. This is, unfortunately, as I said, when we used to see the Kavariyas in the 70s and 80s, they were a different kind of Kavariyas. It was different. And there were some people who were driven by their religious sentiment, and the whole thing about Shravan Kumar, Zameen Pe Bhi Nahi. But I mean, I have not walked with the Kavariyas ever, but I have driven on the roads of Delhi alongside the Kavariyas year after year. I have to say it has been one of the most lumpen forces that I have seen. As a woman driver on the roads of Delhi, when I have driven alongside these hordes of Kavariyas who are in the trucks, I mean, the way the language, body language, the way the market, how the whole economy is of the Kavariyas has changed. I can't make any comment on their religious beliefs. That is for them. But the manner in which their cassettes, everything, and some of those cassettes, the music, if you heard, it was outright incitement. Outright. I think some young students and all have tried to study all that. And this is not something isolated. I remember during my field work in around 2008 going to Bengal, and this Bakura belt, close to Jharkhand now. And there again, so I was a bit surprised when I asked, because I did not know of this. I asked, I said, "Ye kya ho raha hai?" Because okay, in the north we are slightly familiar with the Kavariyas. Then I was told this Devghar and that whole tradition. What I'm saying is, it is not isolated. Soon after that, first comes the कावड़, then उनका घड़ा आता है, फिर उनका वो आता है, उसके पीछे क्या आता है वो आज हमको दिख रहा है. So what happened in Bengal also we saw. What I'm saying is, the ruling classes don't give up. They've never given up in history. They use every ploy. Nothing. The landlord will not give up his mind, mentality, power, authority of being the landlord. So the Jotdars in Bengal, they will try to come back. Left nahi hai, they will try to come back. So today we are seeing what I would say, this attempt by Dharma Sansads to rule the country. Dharma Sansads are going to decide what is going, an open call to incitement, which is violative of the Constitution of India. We are very clear, at least I am very clear. Everyone has a right to their religion if they believe in one. Okay, whoever believes in whichever religion, you have a right to that religion and to uphold the faith. But that religion cannot overstep the boundaries and cannot deny to others the rights which the Indian Constitution gives to us. That is not permissible in the name of religion. And it should not be permissible in any court of law. As a part of the women's movement, we recognize women are some of the most religious. Okay, that's your religion. But do we allow our religious beliefs to declare and decide the fate of the country and how rule and law is going to be interpreted in the country? That I don't think we can accept. So I think I would draw the line there.
The questions which have been asked sufficiently asked, in fact, as extension of the morning session class we had. Thank you very much, Dr. Indu Agnihotri ji. We are enlightened with your address today. I'm sure the All India Insurance Employees Association will carry forward the suggestions given to us in the coming days. And as already told, that we have our history, All India Insurance Employees Association history book is there. We have to update it, and naturally we have to update it, particularly in the present context, where the ruling dispensation is unleashing all attacks and abrogating the trade union laws, and working class is at a crossroads. So this class shall definitely benefit all of us, and I hope, can we give a big round of applause to now,